And now, the survival show that once survived, putting a tinfoil hat on just a little too tight, and then looking up Chelsea Manning's skirt. In this episode, we welcome back Justin Carrol. He's going to share with us the reality of Vault 7 WikiLeaks info dump. And we answer the question, is your smart home sending the CIA and NSA pictures of your prepper junk? Howdy and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 209. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole, safe and sound. Justin, welcome back to In the Rabbit Hole, dude. We always have a good time when you come on, and we always talk about crazy shit. And today, we're going to talk about extra crazy shit. But first, of course, welcome back to the show, man.
Aaron, thanks so much for having me on. It's great to be here.
So, yeah, like, all kinds of crazy, super secret spy stuff just got dumped out into the world, and it's kind of confusing as to actually what got put out there and what's going on and what's real and what's not. So can you give us a quick rundown on this Vault 7 stuff?
Yeah, kind of a crazy time right now. So in a nutshell, what happened? WikiLeaks got hold of 8,600, 8,700, somewhere in that ballpark, documents from the CIA. And man, these things ran the game. Quite honestly, most of them were unclassified, but for official use only, which really means nothing. It means you're not supposed to disseminate it to the news media, but it's not classified. It's not a crime if you spill it or give it to someone. Some of the stuff was secret, and a lot of that was really low-level stuff. Things like classes on how to use certain coding programs and that sort of thing. And a lot of people wonder why those are even classified secret, because everybody knows how to use Microsoft whatever already, but typically those are classified secret just because of the affiliation with the agency. They don't want it to be common knowledge that they use that program or that they have that capability or whatever the case may be. And then we had a little bit of top secret stuff, a lot of which dealt with the agency's kind of hacking capabilities or, offensive cyber capabilities or whatever you want to call that, but a lot of hacking tools. And some of those were really detailed, and, some of them were just kind of capability statements, and some of them were a little bit more than that. And to the point that persons with malicious intent could actually use that information to craft their own exploits. So it kind of runs the gamut, man, from ho-hum all the way up to, wow, that it's really bad that got spilled. And of course, we're seeing all kinds of sensational headlines about the agency has broken this encryption. They're listening to everybody on their smart TVs and whatever else. The news media is just kind of running with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some of it you said like, oh, wow, okay, this is bad. Like what? Help me out here. Give me an example. Like why? For me, this is difficult because I just always assume they have all kinds of very sensational pictures of me doing all kinds of very strange things in fields with barnyard animals or something. All of which totally not true. But joking aside, like I've always just assumed, and it always kind of cracks me up when they're like, "Oh my God, they're doing," and I'm like, well, "Yeah, of course they were." I mean, like, why does it really matter? Like what damage is done? Like what is the seriousness of this? What are other people able to do? Whether other entities or nations or whatever are able to do with this information, the serious stuff that's been leaked?
That's kind of difficult to summarize in a quick 5-word sentence. So some of this stuff really doesn't matter and is not that big a deal. No one cares if the agency uses Microsoft Word or whatever. It doesn't matter. And some of it does matter. And I feel like WikiLeaks, maybe for a change, attempted to responsibly disclose. And there's a difference between full disclosure and responsible disclosure. And I'll compare that distinction with Chelsea Manning and with Edward Snowden. So Snowden reached out to some very reputable journalists They redacted things, names of people in the field who could potentially be endangered by the information that was reported. They were very careful in what they published and what they did not, and a huge amount of that information was never published. And Snowden himself knew everything that was in the documents that he turned over. Manning, on the other hand, I don't have a ton of respect for, because
he just kind of lifted up his skirt and showed everything?
Quite honestly, yeah, millions of documents. There's no way that she could have looked at every single one of those documents and known what was on them. And WikiLeaks just published them all. So there's that kind of illustrates the distinction between responsible disclosure and full disclosure. I think WikiLeaks tried to responsibly disclose some stuff. They replaced names with numeric identifiers and some things like that, so we could see who had authored certain documents and stuff of that nature, while still protecting the identity of that person. But still, I guess where the rub comes in for me, I'm not an anti-government person. I think there's a very real reason we need government and intelligence agencies and law enforcement and that sort of thing. I do think there needs to be disclosure. I'm a huge supporter of Edward Snowden because of the nature of the stuff that he released and the way in which he did it. So I'm not anti-news media. I'm not anti-government. I think there has to be balance. I think there's constitutional precedent kind of for all of it. But I guess the problem comes in when, certain capabilities are released. Like, we all assume like, oh, the CIA, the NSA, they can do anything. But our adversaries that are actually operating against our intelligence agencies, this is good information for them to have, because now they have clearly defined, this is what the agency is capable of. They're probably not capable of this because it wasn't commented on, or we have contradictory information right here in this report. So, and then the other part of it is, I think it's just kind of sensationalism. Like, this is some good headlines that people are going to click on, and this is going to drive CNN and FoxNews.com and MSNBC.com's revenue streams. And really, I think that's probably the biggest piece of it, to be honest.
Yeah, and speaking to that, and you brought this up a second ago, so everybody's worried now that their smart TV is spying on them. Let's go into that for a second. Like, is this true? And now for a quick break. Listeners, do you get at least $3 a month worth of value out of ITRH? We'd love to give you more. Visit itrh.net to find out about membership benefits. For starters, members get access to every episode ever produced and a monthly virtual conference. That's just for starters. And it's important to note, In the Rabbit Hole is supported nearly entirely by roving Horde Armada members just like you. That's how we pay the bills, stay on the air, keep the lights on around here. So go to itrh.net to learn how you can become part of the ITRH Roving Horde Armada. Next up, subscribe to the show through your favorite podcast app to make sure you never miss an episode by going to intherabbithole.com/iTunes or intherabbithole.com/Stitcher or intherabbithole.com/iHeartRadio or intherabbithole.com/Google Play. Or if you are one of those weirdos who listen to the show through YouTube, you can go to intherabbithole.com/YouTube, because you know what? We support weirdos. However weird you want to be, we're all about that. Now, back to the show. So everybody's worried now that their smart TV is spying on them. Let's go into that for a second. Like, is this true?
Well, kind of, yeah. So this is not news. Again, this is just kind of something that now has reached mainstream consciousness and is a headline. But I was reading articles in 2013 about Samsung TVs that had cameras in them that knew when you came in the room and left the room and that sort of thing. So, and the potential for those to be hacked. And yes, that is a possibility. And yes, it is something that the agency is doing. Now, are they doing it to every American? No, I can tell you right now that any country's intelligence assets are finite in nature. And any intelligence you collect, especially audio, which you know from running a podcast, the more audio you collect, the more audio that you have to process somehow. You have to have someone sit there and listen to it, translate it, transcribe it. Takes time, money, and resources. And there's computer programs that can do that, but no agency has an unlimited budget or an unlimited personnel roster. So doing this to every American is probably not a concern. And, if you are on the CIA's radar, then yeah, maybe they're listening. This is definitely a possibility. And I think the thing that people are freaking out about is now we have confirmation that someone's actually doing it instead of 3 or 4 years ago when it was like, oh, this is a theoretical thing that a hacker could maybe do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think maybe that's it. For some of us, we just always assumed it's been going on. And so it was like, well, yeah, big whoop. All you did was confirm what I already pretty much believed was going on anyway. And then the rest of and then there's the mainstream folks who aren't quite so crazy as the rest of us, who are just like, oh my God, they're looking at me in my underwear while I watch TV. So yeah, and then we get to have, funny nighttime TV shows where reporters are asking Edward Snowden if this NSA has dick pics of the host. So yeah. So there's been some really big headlines. And I think this one really does actually kind of concern me, which is that the CIA, we keep saying CIA, but I'm kind of using CIA as a space filler here, and that if the CIA is doing it, everybody within with initials is doing it within reason and within budget. But they've broken some pretty major encryption programs. That kind of worries me. Kind of fill us in on that. What are your thoughts on that?
The thing that got reported in headlines is the CIA has broken some of these really well-known and well-recognized encryption instant message or chat or voice communication programs like Signal or Wire Private Messenger or Wickr and things of that nature. What actually appears in those documents is that the CIA can potentially hack your phone and get some sort of implant onto it and basically record your text from your keyboard as you type it. They're not pulling this encrypted message out of the air, breaking the encryption, and then looking at its content. So, kind of by that same school of thought, if I could come into your house when you're not there, put a microphone in your bedroom and record your conversations that way, that's essentially saying the same thing. The encryption is not broken. Those programs have not been compromised, but that's what is being widely reported. And I think that's really irresponsible. I think it has a tendency to break public trust in those programs. Those programs are still the best things we have, and they are still completely viable. And I still trust Signal and Wire. Those are my go-tos, encrypted messaging programs.
So, and that's good to know. And actually, I was joking around with someone. It was actually about 4 weeks ago, and they were being paranoid about something. And I was like, well, if you want to be that paranoid about it, we can use 3 of these different encryption apps and just spread out our conversations over the 3. Which is funny because if they've not broken the apps, it doesn't really matter because then they're just recording what you're typing on your phone. That's a little disturbing.
That is a little tinfoil hat, but that is a technique to have an out-of-band communication pathway. Like Signal is my primary, and we'll use this other thing as out-of-band and break up certain parts of that. Or if I'm going to send you the encrypted file over this medium, I will send you the password through something else, and there's low risk that both of those things have been compromised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was very tinfoil hat, and it was, I would say, 98% we were kidding around, and what we were, our conversations were definitely not that interesting. I think we were talking about something of no consequence or interest now that I can't even think what we were talking about, but we were just being silly. But it does bring up the point and I guess, so I think this goes back to that these agencies and even as a pooled resource do not have the capabilities and probably won't have the capabilities for at least 5 to 10 years at the absolute earliest to consume and then digest and analyze everything going on. So most likely they're not listening to your grandmother's conversation. Or your conversation, for that matter. Well, maybe yours, but not mine. Well, probably mine, but not, everyone's.
Yeah, probably ours, for sure. Yeah, hopefully they're subscribers. So
exactly.
Yeah. man, the future state of this stuff is really kind of in doubt and really kind of speculative. And like even from things like the Snowden leaks, which again were 2013, that was 4 years ago, were capabilities that probably most of us thought were kind of maybe realistically plausible, maybe kind of something that someone could do. And even the things that came out then seemed pretty sensational and really, really high level. So I don't want to underestimate this. But as far as using, encryption programs like Signal or encrypted email like Proton Mail, which I'm a big fan of, those aren't going to save you from the CIA or the NSA or the FBI. But what they will do is take you out of that by default mass collection. They're going to collect that data that you send over the internet or over your cell connection or whatever. But encryption works is kind of the takeaway from this. If the CIA could have broken Signal, they wouldn't be so worried about getting implants onto your phone to capture your communication at the point of origin. They would just be pulling it out of the air, which is honestly much, much lower risk for them. Encryption works. And if the CIA is after you, NSA, FBI, they're going to find another way to get you. They're going to go into your house and put listening devices in or put a surveillance team on you or fly a drone over you or something. Like there's pretty much the omniscient adversary. So Signal is not going to solve all those problems for you, but it does opt you out of that. Just by default, everything I say is being sent to a data center in Utah.
What is going on with that? I actually haven't kept up with that data center because there was a point at which they were talking about restricting water from them, and then all of a sudden that data center, I guess, just wasn't that exciting with the news anymore and kind of fell off. And I hadn't really been paying attention. Have you?
I have not. I would assume it's probably proceeding as planned, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
I doubt the local town government in Utah really has that much sway over the national security apparatus.
Yeah. So I guess to back up for a second, how vulnerable are we really in our daily life? Like how vulnerable is the average person? And does it even matter? Like yeah, it sucks. They're collecting all of our crap. Where is this something the average person, other than being pissed off that this is a pretty big violation of our rights, like, what is this going to do to us?
Well, I mean, man, vulnerability is really kind of a funny thing to think about, because I had someone recently email me and say, "Hey, man, how do I make my Gmail account more secure?" And it's great that you want to do that, but Gmail is collecting all that data and packaging it and selling it. So it doesn't matter how secure you make it from the outside. It's going to be sold back outside of Gmail's ecosystem anyway to advertisers. So this is a very kind of holistic approach you have to take. And I'm gonna sound really tinfoil hat for a little while. Same thing with Facebook. You can lock down your Facebook, and you should, so people can't go in and read your Facebook messages and pretend to be you and post things that you don't want posted. But if you're putting your whole life on Facebook, how private do you really want to be? And there's a lot of things we can do to make ourselves more resilient to this, but they require, there's no silver bullet, man. There's no install this one program and you're secure from everything. It requires a lot of behavioral modification. So just generally speaking, out of the box, most people are pretty insecure. Most people that have 85 apps installed on their phone that didn't look at any of the permissions before they installed them, maybe run a outdated version of iOS because they think the new one's going to slow their iPhone 5S down, or run an Android operating system and have never been into app specific permissions and modified those to lock them down, or computers with out of date programs. Like, all of these things are just increase your attack surface immensely. Generally speaking, as a society, we're pretty vulnerable. And the smart TV thing is kind of a good example. It's an Internet of Things, IoT device that most of us don't think twice about, like your Alexa or your Nest thermostat, which Google acquired Nest for over $1 billion. Why does Google care about a thermostat company? Google is an advertising company. Why do they want to be in the thermostat business? Why did they produce Android and give it to the free and open source or the free community? And really the answer is these are all collection platforms for Google. And Internet of Things, your smart refrigerator, your everything has a computer in it now. Mm-hmm. All of these things, we tend to not think about them, but they all have some impact that we're probably just hasn't been a major headline like the smart TV thing yet. And if you follow the information security news, I'm sure you are familiar with distributed denial of service attacks, but maybe the listeners aren't. It's basically an attack where a hacker controls hundreds of thousands of computers and sends them all to a website at the same time to shut down that website. So no legitimate customer can get to it. And the last few major DDoS attacks that have happened in the news haven't been hacked computers as we think of computers. They haven't been hacked laptops and desktops predominantly. They've been hacked refrigerators and toasters and washers and dryers that have computers enabled, and with firmware that's just grossly out of date. And man, it's really hard for the end user to, well, first of all, to update the firmware in your fancy washing machine's computer, even if you wanted to. So this is like a really growing thing. Like societally, we're also kind of vulnerable, which is kind of where I have an issue with the national security apparatus wanting to weaken encryption and weaken these, put backdoors in encryption. The Greeks had a backdoor in all the mobile phones for years. And the problem with backdoors is they're not technically possible. It's not technically possible to make it only available to one party. And what they found out 5 years later is that the Greek mafia had been listening into everyone's conversations that they wanted to listen to too, because they had also discovered the backdoor. And I kind of see a problem of running into a conflict of national security versus everyone being so super insecure rather, that is in and of itself a national security issue.
Yeah, and then there becomes the societal issue where we're giving up a lot of we're giving up a lot of security for convenience. And actually, this is something even my wife and I have discussed, which is most of the light bulbs, almost all of the light bulbs, except a couple of light bulbs in closets, are Hue light bulbs. And I know this is a dumb thing, but we love our Hue light bulbs. They're really cool, and everything is automated and everything's timed, and we get within, a certain distance from our house, and the bright lights in the house come on, and we don't have to think about it, and everything's timed, and we have mood lighting and all kinds of other stuff, and it's lots of fun. But then, there's that one more device in our home that has a vulnerability. And I'm not going to lie, there was one light in particular that kept doing really weird shit in our bedroom for a while. And I was like, MF, have I been hacked? Is somebody dicking with me? Because they keep turning on the bedroom light at full blast at 4:30 in the morning. And I'm just like, is somebody messing with me? Or is there just one of the lights is stupid? But I'm crazy. I wear tinfoil hat for a living, so it's cool. I can do these kinds of things. I'm a professional. Don't try this at home, kids. But on a serious note, that becomes kind of the tricky part. We have these smart TVs that do all these exciting and fun things for us, and smart lights and smart refrigerators and smart washers and dryers. And in doing that, we make our lives insecure. And I guess it's a hard road to decide which side of that road you want to drive on, I guess.
Yeah, to your light bulb point, there is a website called showdan.io. Mm-hmm. It's there was a CNN or Forbes article on it kind of recently. They called it the scariest search engine in the world. And basically, go on it and you search for people's unsecured home automation systems, their unsecured cameras. You can turn people's heat up or turn their lights off or watch their cameras or whatever. And it's kind of random with a unpaid account. You don't have a ton of control of which search results pop up for you. But yeah, man, connected home is not something I'm super into. MacBook and a 357. It's all you need. Yeah, man, it is a choice and it is a balance that kind of everyone needs to make. And the problem is not very many people are thinking about it at all. Not very many people are this isn't even something that's in most people's awareness. They buy their phone, they think of it as a phone. It's not a phone, it's a computer that you carry in your pocket. It's also a tracking device that tracks if Trump came down and said every American has to wear a tracking device 24 hours a day, be revolt in the streets. Instead, we go out and pay Verizon $1,200 a year to be able to carry one around in our pocket. And we also say, yeah, guess what? You can also share all this tracking data with Yelp and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and Verizon and whoever wants it, whoever has an app that I like. So, I think there's a big lack of awareness, and on kind of the security side, just kind of securing your system, and then there's a big lack of both awareness and know-how. Well, I guess that goes for security too, but on the privacy side as well, and both of those things require some thought and some decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that is definitely something that even home networks is not something that people usually think about. And that was one of the things when we moved into this house, and I was doing a whole lot of work on both our wired and wireless network. And my wife was like, why are you going through all this trouble? And why do we have like a network inside a network? And I was like, because I've dealt with this shit before. And while we're not really a big target, I don't want to be an easy target for anything. Now, I didn't go as far with things as I could have, or maybe would have even liked to have, but, it's still more. And I think it always surprises me. Like there was somebody, there were friends that we had that their house got burglarized, and in the process, the burglars somehow managed to shut down their video surveillance system that they had set up. And it was a consumer grade system, so it wasn't a big shock, but it was still like, wow, they actually did put in the effort to shut down that system before breaking into their house. So it happens. It's out there. It's not like it's not widespread yet, but I think that's the other thing too, kind of to what you were speaking about, where the Greek mafia got in there too. It's not just the government that can get into these things. It's anyone with the capability and desire.
Right. And the problem is we're so reactive. This doesn't matter to anyone until either their computer's hacked or their identity's been stolen or whatever. And I'm kind of about a proactive approach, prevent it from happening instead of dealing with the fallout of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was talking to the company that did our alarm system in this house and our previous house. I was talking to him one day about like alarm systems and being in marketing, like the people's sales funnels and pipelines and everything like that interest me. So I was what is the point at which people usually decide? And he's like, oh, immediately after they've been broken into is usually when they decide it's a good time to get an alarm system. And so we are a reactive society, not a proactive society in general. So I'm going to ask you to do a bit of pontification here. What does the future look like? I mean, not like, 50 years from now or anything like that, and it's Brave New Frickin' World or something, or This Perfect Day. I think everybody's reading the wrong book. It does not look like 1984. It looks more like This Perfect Day. But what does it look like in a year or two? Like, where are we? Do we just, as a society, are we just going to keep going down this rabbit hole? And I know I'm asking you to make a ridiculous statement here, but what are your personal thoughts on this? Are we just going to keep going down this road?
Yeah, I think probably so. If you look at the Snowden leaks, there were some major things that came out of that. The very first thing that broke was that major telecom providers were sharing the metadata for every single American, or correct that, millions of Americans, with the National Security Agency, which is not, let's be honest, not chartered to operate on American soil against U.S. persons. And I don't think people understood it because the reaction was like, well, they're not listening to my phone calls, so who cares? Mm-hmm. The thing about metadata is, if I put a physical surveillance team on you to follow you around 24 hours a day, that would probably upset you. And I get about the same things from cell phone metadata that I would get in a report from that team. I get where you've been, who you've met with, who you've talked to, how long you talked, how long you stayed there. Metadata is, like the former general counsel for the NSA said, if you have enough metadata, you don't need anything else. Mm-hmm. And Americans just, like, I don't know if it's a failure of our media to adequately explain this and why it should matter to people, or just the failure of Americans to have an attention span that is big enough to consume that information. But people just don't seem to care, man. And obviously, this is my platform, so I care much, much more than most, but I care about a lot of things a little bit. And I kind of don't understand why this isn't something that most people care about enough to kind of take some steps to mitigate.
Mm-hmm.
I know that didn't really answer your question of where we're going to be in the future, but some people with every one of these things will choose to take some steps, but most won't. The national security apparatus will basically continue to try to expand its powers, and that's understandable on a personal level inside one of those organizations, because we all want to be able to do our job as well as possible. But that's also kind of why we need some national level checks and balances on those things, and some, I'm really kind of upset that the way these things are decided in secret, and there's a lot of laws that are secret that we have no idea are even laws, and kind of echoes of the 1960s with the investigation of COINTELPRO and illegal wiretapping and all that stuff, which was found to be completely out of bounds. And now we're doing this, and we have a few representatives who are kind of with us, so to speak, like Justin Amash and the guy from Oregon. He just left office recently, and his name escapes me. Either. But in any case, there's a few people we have a few representatives that kind of have our back, but the vast majority don't, and nothing's going to change until Americans, and maybe even if Americans really let their representatives know that they care about this, nothing's going to change, man. Mm. So it's basically up to us to do it ourselves.
Yeah, which brings up what is some basic stuff, just some basic stuff people can do to insulate themselves. Like we've talked about Proton Mail, we've talked about Signal, we've talked about Wicker. Let's kind of go down that road. Like what are some basic things that people could do?
I don't want to self-promote too much here, but the month of March, starting last year in March, I do a 30-day security challenge on my blog. And every day there's like a small bite-sized security task. And basically, if you just do the first week of that, give you a good deal of protection from all these things that we're talking about here. And they're the boringest things in the world. It's basically keeping your operating system up to date, doing an application audit, and getting rid of any program or application that you don't need. And anything that you haven't used in the last 30 days, you probably don't need. And if you do need it again, go download it again. If it's paid, save your registration key, get rid of it. And then if you need it again, go get it again, but don't leave it on there. Keep your applications up to date. And that's probably the two biggest things right there. Keep everything up to date, because these security patches that come out are there for a reason. And once they come out, Microsoft, Apple, Android, whomever is basically saying, hey, there's vulnerability in this protocol that we are addressing here. And you can basically look at that patch and reverse engineer the vulnerability. So leaving it unpatched is really playing fast and loose. Migrate your data on your computers to a standard user account, not an administrator account. And use full disk encryption. Encrypt your phone, encrypt your computer. Those are huge, huge layers. And then, obviously there's things like, I guess that's to secure your local computer. If we want to work outward from there, use a virtual private network. I recommend private internet access. I don't pitch them because I make money from them. Full disclosure, I'm an affiliate, but I'm also running private internet access right now on all of my devices. I use it. I believe in it. Set up a password manager and have a different, long, randomly generated password on every single one of your online accounts. Set up two-factor authentication. And then if you want to get a little tinfoil hat with it, migrate to Proton Mail. Get off of Gmail, the paid Proton Mail accounts. And by the way, Google is not free because you're not the customer. You are the product. Google is so good and has all these tools like YouTube and Translate and Maps and Street View and Waze and Nest thermostats, not because they love you as the customer. It's because you're their product and they want to make you a better product. They want to make you give them more information so they can sell you to someone else. So you're paying for it either way. And like Proton Mail does have free accounts. They're fairly limited. You only get maybe 500 megabytes of storage. The paid accounts aren't that expensive. Your emails to and from other Proton Mail users are end-to-end encrypted. All your stuff is stored in an encrypted state on their servers, so it's inaccessible. Signal is a free private messaging and voice calling application that has probably the strongest encryption protocol for data in motion like that we know of, the unique Signal protocol. Wire Private Messenger is another one that I use. I like it because it works equally well on my desktop and my phone. I know Signal has a desktop app, but you can't do calling and that from it. And then, obviously you can go much, much deeper in the weeds with it, but that's pretty much the 99% solution.
Those are great tips. So you mentioned that you have a challenge on your blog. Give us your blog address and let's talk about the challenge for a second.
Okay. PrepperOpsec.com. And that will redirect you to my blog. And last year, for some crazy reason, I thought, you know what? I'm going to do a blog post a day. I'm going to break security, this big security monster, down into like a daily, like let's say 5 to 15 minute thing, and things that maybe take a little longer, I'll throw on Saturdays. We'll have Sundays off. And at the end of a month, if you do everything, you'll be really, really secure, at least relative to all your peers, all your former peers, because now you're a very, very secure person. And this year, I decided to go through, redo it all, restructure it a little bit. And basically it starts, week 1 was securing the local system with the steps I just talked about. Week 2 works outward a little bit from there with a virtual private network and some internet browser stuff. And then we're about to start the 3rd week, which will go into online account security, and then wrap up probably with some kind of advanced stuff that I didn't get into last year. So that's in a nutshell what it is, man. It's designed to be a daily, manageable, bite-sized chunk.
So how hard does it? Well, it's most of it from what you've just said is pretty easy and pretty accessible. Does it get very super geeky technical, where the average person starts having a hard time with this stuff, or does it stay like, is it on a graduated scale, or how does that, like, is it pretty approachable for most people?
Man, I intend this not for my regular readers who have probably already done it. My idea with this is kind of for people who have no idea where to start. And I mean, I kind of do the best I can with the written word and screenshots. And I've put up a couple of videos this year of things that were just too crazy for me to explain like that. Mm-hmm. So I really want this to be hey, take 15 minutes, read this, and then go do this. Go make sure your computer is configured to automatically download and install your operating system updates. Pat yourself on the back, go have a beer, come back tomorrow. And it's my hope that it's really approachable to everyone.
Awesome. What is that website address one more time?
That is PrepperOpsec.com.
Awesome. Justin, thank you so much for clearing up some of this and scaring the living crap out of us in some ways. And hopefully it prompts some people to be more secure, and not even just to plug you. Like, I am actually going to go take your 30-day challenge because it sounds like fun and interesting stuff. And I like my tinfoil hats. I like them a little tight, not cutting off circulation crazy, but I like them a little snug. So I'm going to go check it out. Awesome stuff, dude. As always, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for doing what you're doing and sharing some really cool information.
Absolutely, Aaron. Thanks so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Before we close out today, 3 quick things. First, we now have the Tactical Weimaraner Alert System 3.0 in the house. She even came in rapscallion gray. So if you hear odd noises or snoring in the background from now on, you know what's making those noises. Second, I am done with the flu, thankfully, and we will now resume our normal broadcasting schedule. Sorry for ducking out on there for the last couple of weeks on y'all. We are long overdue for a listener questions episode. Be sure to send in your questions to questions@intherabbithole.com. Again, questions@intherabbithole.com. We're also long overdue on a book club episode. I am working that for y'all. Sometimes it can be a little difficult to get these fiction authors in here. They tend to be a little microphone shy. So we're working on all that. And finally, the 2017 black ITRH ball caps are in the mail, kids. For those of y'all that pre-ordered them, all those pre-orders are now full. There are a few extra of the limited edition hats, and one could be yours if you go to intherabbithole.com/shop. You will see it there. Again, intherabbithole.com/shop. Those are the announcements, show notes, links to Justin's security challenge, and other resources can be found by going to intherabbithole.com/E209. Support the show and get Roving Horde Armada only benefits. Visit itrh.net today to find out more and help us keep the lights on. The show is supported nearly entirely by listeners just like you. With that, we wrap up episode 209 from the Lone Star State. Till next time, stay safe and sound.